thing we do is look at what Tinley was writing in the Triathlete magazine. And this is back years ago. There were no coaches. Now Jim Vance, you've advanced as a triathlete. You've seen others come and go. You've learned from their experience. You've got great products with RPM2. Talk about what's going on with us on the main stage with RPM2. Jim Vance, how are you, Coach?
Great, Eric. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I think you said it well. Technology in the sport as a whole has really ramped up everything. Obviously, from performance to the need for coaches and understanding training theories, periodization models, everything. I can't remember the number, but I read a statistic that the number of athletes here is a pretty high number of that coaches. So, you know, when you get into, especially as competitive as this race has become, the margin of error becomes much smaller. So athletes have to look at ways to incorporate technology, you know, coaches, experts, things like that. And yeah, I've been fortunate to be coached by some great past greats myself. Peter Reed coached me, Greg Welch coached me, Joe Friel. So that's quite the
that's
trio
quite
right
a
there.
Threesome right there, the amigos. Now, talk about just the running with power. You know, here in Hawaii, there's a very elite starting field. But in your domestic Ironmans throughout the world, you're seeing athletes that are 25, 30% body fat. They're buying the aerodynamic helmet. They're buying the compression socks. But they're not even considering the truth about fitness, which is power output. And talk about the power to weight ratio and, you know, why sometimes buying the speed isn't really the way to go. It's the investment and checking out the website rpm2.com.
Sure. So I can tell you, going back to my professional racing days, you know, I had an Ironman podium at Florida myself.
I remember that.
There was never, ever, and there still to this day is no one piece of equipment I could buy that would allow me to train dumb.
Yep.
So you've got to be ready. You've got to get training right. And so many athletes are investing in the racing side, the race day side, and not, I think, enough in the process side of preparation. So, you know, RPM2 is a new company that's come out. The CEO is Johnny Ross. Johnny comes actually from a medical background.
Yeah, that's the beauty of your product. It's not just some hocus pocus, hoping it's going to work. It's from the medical community, which has a good origin.
Absolutely. So he started doing a lot of just measurements and, you know, being able to look at athletes, you know, bilateral equivalency or lack thereof. And from there, he was able to use a lot of the pressure sensors and the footbeds that he was using to understand, like, wow, I could actually use this to measure force and speed of force, and that's power.
And talk about that at the booth. You've got the booth right here, right by Souls and Wigwam and Goo. Talk about what's going on at the booth with the biomechanics and the balance.
Sure. So there, Johnny and his compadre Keith, they're over there just kind of demonstrating the product to people, talking about some of the things they have. I know they have a special going on for orders here. I think it's like save $150, I believe. So they've got some other things, but they're even demonstrating kind of showing how the product's used, but also why it's important, which I think is good. You can actually see which side you're maybe favoring more than another, which foot's actually producing what amounts of watts, and that's on the bike and on the run. So it's pretty impressive stuff. Ironically, back in 2011, I wrote an article that I put on my blog that I said, once we have power meters in shoes, every world record that we know is going to fall, from sprinters to the marathon.
And talk about why that is.
Because when we can actually measure work and force production and cadence, and we can see small changes in technique and how that affects performance, that's huge. Then that's the thing. A lot of us think, well, I'm going to go out on my run and I'm going to run this pace. Well, okay, that's great, but how do you know you're running that pace as efficiently as you can? And that's where power actually helps. And in fact, that's one of the big conundrums I think that a lot of athletes are going to have with power as it kind of rolls out more and more. It's going to explode in running. But on the bike, it's all about more watts, more watts, more watts, more watts. In running, that's not how it is. On the Queen K, you can't really control your speed. You got, you know, Madame Pele and her wins. You've got the uphills, the downhills, other things. But in running, we absolutely care about pace. Speed is absolutely everything. So actually, instead of trying to do more watts, if you can actually do less watts for the same pace, that can be huge for you, especially in the early stages when you come off the bike.
So efficiency and conservation of your glycogen stores, which will eventually lock up. Talk about what's going on with running with power. You know, there was a gentleman over at a shoe booth yesterday talking about a power meter for shoes and how he's working on that, all these different ideas. Talk about what's going on right now with the running with power. And by the way, on the main stage right now, Jim Vance.
RPM Squared is the only footbed-based power meter that there is, and it's pretty impressive. It can even do a lot of things in terms of measuring how you land and show you that, which I think is key, especially in terms of maybe assessing which pair of shoes are best for you, actually, rather than just filming and trying to figure it out from the filming side. Running with power now is going to actually, like I say, give us that. You're going to be able to get real-time measurements, or you can, if you're the type, hey, I don't really want to know, these things are Bluetooth. You can connect it to your phone, set your phone down, go for a run, come back, and it'll connect to the insole, will connect back to your phone and take the data from your run, and you can see how you did. But when you start looking at these metrics and you start tracking them, especially efficiency metrics, there's so many metrics that probably our athletes who use power meters right now on their bikes, they're used to, but the problem is they don't take pace into consideration or speed from the cycling world. So we're actually going to be rolling out with a whole new set of metrics soon that could, that look at the power to pace ratio, efficiency, economy, and even potentially 3 dimensions, 3 variables, power, pace, and heart rate. And now you're really talking economy, and we can really get precision in. Here's a perfect example, I think, of one of the things that we're going to be able to see. You take an athlete who's injured, okay? He's battling maybe a calf or hamstring injury or something, and so they change their gait a little bit. Well, they may think, well, I went out for an easy run. It was only, for our athletes, an easy run might be 8-minute pace, with this quality of field. But to run that, the work required, because you've changed your gait, now changes the actual training stress that easy run was. So now you're really starting to dial in, not based upon pace, but upon the actual work that you're completing. So when we start dialing in training stress to that, not can we just notice when an athlete's injured, potentially when they're healthy, but now even maybe that an injury is on the brink. If you're starting to see an increase in inefficiency, watts are increasing relative to a pace that they're running, and they're maybe complaining, well, my hamstrings bother me. Now, as a coach, that's a huge sign. Hey,
overtraining and almost an injury. So this product could, in a sense, see all the red flags about to appear before a tissue releases from the bone or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Talk about some of those success stories and maybe athletes that are out here this year racing and how they've used your products with success.
Well, I'm not actually with RPM Squared, so I can't necessarily speak about athletes that have used their products specifically. They would know better than I. I'm just more of a power expert. I'm writing a book with Bellow Press on running with power. They'll be out in the spring. But, and this technology is absolutely so new, Eric, that we honestly don't know a lot of stuff. One of the biggest things athletes come to me, well, how do I find out my functional threshold power for running? And I've had to say, I don't know. And now they look at me like, well, you're supposed to be the expert. I'm like, yeah, but this stuff is so new.
Yeah, that's quite a question.
Yes, we don't actually know that answer. Yes, we can. I know for myself, when I was racing, I knew what my functional threshold pace was, probably within about plus or minus 10 seconds, just from experience. So on my runs, what I've actually been doing is I've been estimating my threshold power based upon my perceived exertion. Okay, what do I think I can hold just watching it? So so to give you an example, my functional threshold power right now, I would guess for running is about 330, 340 watts. So, and of course, some of the big questions I get from athletes is, well, what should my threshold watts be? Well, the answer is obviously the higher the better. The higher the work level you can sustain, the better you're going to be. But it also becomes now a watt per kilo. And then, okay, what is your threshold pace that you can maintain? Let's look at that, and what's that relationship with power? So I know of only a couple athletes in the race that are even going to use a running power meter. I think Sarah Pompiano might be using one. I don't know, maybe a few others. But it's like I say, it's such new technology that it's even hard to say that there's been these success stories yet because we're still learning about it.
Well, website, any details about the website and when people get back into reality, late October, early November, and they settle in and think, okay, I got to get a few new winter holiday gifts on the item list. Why would they want to put those items on their wish list for those extras that you need?
Well, I think if you're looking at doing the process of training better and smarter, certainly you want to invest in tools that help you on a daily basis.
And this is part of the process. They
Absolutely.
say trust the process. A lot of athletes think about race day and how they're going to look, but then they don't do their homework and they're trying to bake the cake and frost the cake before it's out of the oven. And that's where you do. This isn't exactly exciting stuff, but it does help reduce injury, increase your recovery.
It actually does a couple more things even besides power, and I think a lot of people don't know that. One of the most impressive things I saw was how you just wear the insole in your shoe and you lift your leg and bring it down. You just run through some flexibility tests and it'll tell you, okay, well, your angle on this flexibility test was it takes a couple of seconds to do the test. And literally you can track that, do it over the course of a week. Let's say you're an athlete who's got chronic tension in your hamstring. You can take it, you can test it for
right here
over the course of a few months. Let's say you start yoga, you want to see how yoga is affecting it. Well, okay, here you go. Now you can test it and test it. As a coach, my athlete can do that on their phone through their app, take that data, it'll actually graph the charting of, okay, up to this point since you started testing, here's where it's at. Send me that through the app. Literally email this to Jim Vance, my coach. And now I can see, well, wow, that yoga's having a great effect on that hamstring. Now I'm also probably seeing power numbers in the running, maybe even out a little bit, or biomechanical efficiency. You finish a run, that thing will tell you, you really favor your left side, you really favor your right side. So now it's not just guessing, well, is this yoga class helping me? Or is this extra stretching that I'm doing helping me? Is this extra ART helping? Massage therapy. You can actually get numbers to kind of help show that. And again, we go back to it. If the opposite is happening, where you're starting to see more favoring of one side, increased watts for what should be an aerobic intensity pace, now you're looking at projecting injury ahead of time, and that's really the key. If you can stay consistent, and especially in this, if you're planning on racing here against the best, you can't afford to miss too many days or get training wrong.
No, absolutely not. With us on the main stage, Coach Jim Vance with RPM2.com. So in closing, talk about what we've got going on at the booth. You've got the spin bike out there. You're talking about power meters and talking about the products. What's going on over there at the booth?
Sure. I think Johnny and Keith, I think they're demonstrating how it works, showing it on the apps, showing actually on a spin bike, so athletes can maybe even test it themselves, or at least see how it works in real time, connected to a phone. And I'm sure over they've got plans and projections of what the next steps are and where things will be. And being a new product, athletes obviously have a lot of questions. So of course they're there answering questions. And I know, like I said, I think they have a $150 off special there. So,
well, please go check out RPM2 booth and their website, RPM2.com. Jim Vance, in closing. You've been coached by Peter Reed, Greg Welch. Those guys obviously know what they're doing. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. They've helped you a lot. Talk about if someone is going to spend the time on getting a coach. Years ago, before GPS, we'd call AAA, and we'd say we're going to Disney World, and they'd map out point A to point B, and you'd get there in the quickest way. Well, now with GPS and coaching and people doing triathlons a year and a half, and then they're going pro, and then they're coaching, and they're not qualified. Talk about, in closing, you as a qualified coach, talk about why it's important to have a qualified coach and not some poser that's going to end up injuring that athlete.
Well, I think results speak for themselves. There are a number of outstanding coaches here right now. I look at Matt Dixon, I look at Cliff English, tons of others.
Dave
Scott, excellent. So, the names are out there. Research.
Mark Allen.
Yeah, you just have to find the right personality. They all have different approaches. I'm a very much a numbers guy, a technical guy. So the proof is in the performance. The numbers get better, and when we know the numbers that are required to perform well here, that helps the athlete's confidence.
So do your research, find out an authentic coach, not someone who's only been in the sport less than 1,000 days.
And commit to it.
There you go.
Commit to the plan. So many athletes don't commit enough.
Well, one of the nicest guys in the sport, very approachable, Jim Vance. Thanks so much for spending time with us. He's going to be over at the RPM2 booth in just a little bit. Find out more about this great product. It'll get you to that finish line that much quicker. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.